We'll do a little mailbag. Here's how you get in the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. I'll just fire off a couple questions. Watching every NFL season for more than 15 years, and you are the best to watch. I like this guy. Do you think Pete Carroll is outdated and that he is the reason why the Seahawks are a mess on defense? I think they have a lot of great players, but it simply isn't working. Thanks in advance. I think he 100% is outdated, right? Defensive scheme-wise, they're just not good on defense. They haven't been good on defense in years, and they invest a shitload into that side of the ball. But I do think Pete, one, his energy and leadership is fantastic. I think his motivation and just ability to lead a team is still really good. I think as an in-game coach, I don't think he's that good. I mean, he was blowing timeouts in that game against the Eagles, which could have easily bit him in the ass. Then he's like asking for the timeout back, which maybe he just, any one of us would do the same, or maybe he believes that he should get the timeout back. So I think there are outdated qualities to him, though I still think relative to the rest of the NFL, he's probably better. But yeah, defensive scheme-wise, they haven't been good on defense in forever, and that's his baby. So, and they invest a lot into that side of the ball. And I think philosophically, it's pretty clear what he wants to do on offense. Like run the ball, take some deep shots. But, I don't think he's just like, oh, open the offense, sling that pill around. That's not really his, MO. This is a quick question. See across the business world, successful leaders crush in industries they aren't necessarily experts in, have worked in their whole career, essentially valuing historical success more than industry expertise. Why do sports, especially the NFL, seem to be gated? As if you can only become a coach or GM if you've worked your way up in that industry your whole life. For example, while he'd never do it, wouldn't Elon Musk be the best NFL coach if he ever wanted to? Is an offensive playbook really more complicated than literal rocket science? Well, here would be my pushback. I think let's use Elon, for example. From SpaceX to Starlink to Tesla. Those are products, right? So if I create the car, which I listened to Elon the other day at the gym, he was on Rogan within the last couple of months, and he like the hardest part about building cars is the manufacturing, right? And the Starlink, who I know a ton of people have it, is just fucking remarkable product. Nothing is even sniffs that product. My brother is a farmer who's all over the place. He's like, I get elite internet no matter where I go. Ultimately, once you master the product, you just sell it over and over and over and over and over again. I don't follow the SpaceX stuff. I don't have as much in common with the space stuff as that generation, as people over 50, 60, like, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos. I don't know. My generation, we'd already been to space by the time I was born. I don't give a shit. There is no amount of money, and I mean no amount of money, you could pay me to go up to space. Absolutely none. I mean, one, no interest. Two, my life's too valuable because I only have one, and I just have no interest. None. But I think once you master the product, you just sell it over and over. Like once you master a football play, that's only one play. And the other thing is like the product, like ultimately Tesla, the car, and I know he has several different models. It's once you create it and fine tune it, you just do it over and over and over again and just sell it to different people. Like you have to create a million different plays. You have a million different variables by different opponents, individuals. You have motivation factors. You have, guys playing well, guys playing bad. There's such a human element to sports that doesn't exist in business, right? If you're just selling whatever, if you own a trucking company and you also own a, alcohol product, right? Well, once I create whatever said alcohol product is, shout out to Guinness, right? And my trucks, like it's just kind of self-sufficient. And I'm not saying it's that simple, but there are way more variables on a weekly basis in a football game than there are on getting my product to the consumer. So I hear what you're saying, and I don't think it's a crazy question, but I don't think it's even close to being apples to apples, I guess would be my long-winded way of saying it. But I have a different view on the Bears for this upcoming draft. I believe they could find more value in trading the number 1 overall pick and dropping down a few spots to get Marvin Harrison and possibly some offensive linemen from a team desperate for Caleb. They will also have their top 10 pick to get more linemen to protect Fields. They already have a quarterback in Justin that seems to not have hit his ceiling. With an offensive coach, I believe they could become a top team in the NFC North. Justin Fields is not an accurate passer. Listen, I had the guy pegged as my number 2 quarterback in that draft. And he definitely is the second best of that group. But, and Trevor Lawrence is not playing great right now. But you can't build around a guy going into his 4th year whose accuracy is a major issue. He's not an accurate player. So when you're not accurate and his contract's running up, just to get a couple more splash plays, that's not a sustainable way to play. That's why Cousins started becoming, let's face it, a really, really good player as he got older. He's a very accurate passer. Accuracy really, really matters. And Caleb, listen, there's no guarantee he's going to be any good, but he's definitely way more accurate than Justin Fields. And he brings the athleticism and movement skills. He's not as fast as Fields, but you can't keep Fields. I just don't believe, because if you roll it back, and even if he's 5-10% better than this year, what are you going to do? You got a great opportunity because of this trade. I think you cash in the chips. I believe that. Now, if I thought Fields was better, I would understand where you're coming from, and I would agree. But I don't think he's good enough to build around, especially when you factor in his contract and you're a year away from, if you keep him, what's he worth? I know you don't believe in Baker, but what would it take for Baker to get a long-term contract extension? Making the playoffs doesn't seem enough considering their division, but if by some miracle they defeat the Cowboys or the Eagles in the first round, doesn't it warrant a 3 or 5 year contract? Maybe get a 2-year, $40 million deal, guarantee him 25, something like that. I could see that on the table because I think his numbers are pretty similar to Tom last year. They clearly like him a lot, but I've watched him a lot this season. It's he's had some rough games. Now, you win a playoff game, you win the division, you beat the Saints. I'm not sure who they play this week, but I know they got the Saints next week. I think he definitely, I think right now he's getting 1 year, $12 million, which just view it like yourself. If you're making $100,000 right now and you do well and they triple your salary and all of a sudden you make $300,000 or $350,000, huge win. Well, he's making $4 million this year. So it's hey, you were way better than we thought. Here's 1 year, $13 million. That's 3x what he was just, here's $15 million, right? That's 5x, or excuse me, $12 million would be 4x. So imagine being making $50,000 and getting offered $200,000. That's the equivalent. So that's a huge, huge pay raise relative to a guy I can't give Baker Mayfield $25, $30 million a year. I couldn't. But to me, definitely he's earned $12, $15 million, which, like I said, for him would be a pretty big financial win. Especially a guy that, Coward thought he should retire before the season, which I thought was crazy because his value as, one day he might be like the next Herb Street or Joel Klatt. You can fail in the pro. No one cares. I've never seen Herb Street or Klatt throw an NFL pass. No one gives a fuck. Matt Leinart is fantastic on college football. He was an NFL bust. It does not matter. It does not matter. And Baker has actually not only had a relatively successful career, now relative to the number 1 pick, not ideal, but he definitely is resurrecting his career. Something magical happens when the third quarter ends and the fourth quarter begins. The energy changes. The fourth quarter is where games are won, where champions are made. And in business, it's where sales teams become legends. That's why HubSpot built Sales Hub to give sales reps the deal-making tools they need to win in Q4 and close the year strong. Sales Hub Prospecting Workplaces organizes your schedule, goals, and to-do lists in one place to save your team precious fourth quarter time. Smart sequences help sales reps close deals faster than ever. And with an easy-to-use deal management tool, reps can find, track, and close deals all in one place. Plus, AI forecasting helps you accurately predict future success, which means less hoping for deals and more crushing targets. Put your sales team on the fast track to winning Q4 with Sales Hub. Learn more at HubSpot.com/sales. Okay, question about the Bengals. Clearly, their defense is much worse than it has been the first few years, but the majority of their funds are going to be tied up on offense for the next 5. Higgins is set to be a free agent this offseason, and I was wondering what you think the front office should do. Would you pay T and then Jamar, or would you invest a little in defense? I think Tee Higgins will not be on the Cincinnati Bengals next year because I don't think you can afford to pay Jamar Chase as what, $25, $30 million player? What's Tee Higgins? 18, 20? I don't believe you can pay 2 wide receivers that much money. It's the conundrum the 49ers are in. Debo Samuel makes a ton. I think he makes like $25 million a year. Well, Brandon Ayuk's due a contract this offseason. And listen, he's not a $30 million guy, but he definitely is not a $12 million guy. It's hard to have that much invested into the wide receiver position. So I think Tee Higgins could be traded. Honestly, I think Brandon Ayuk, as crazy as it sounds, could be traded too. Now, that one's a little different, but I don't know. I think these are discussions because of how much they cost. If Tee Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, guys like that played tight end or linebacker, it'd be a no-brainer. They don't cost as much. But when you start talking about number 2 wide receivers, and I got to pay my number 2 wide receiver $21 million a year, that's a lot, man. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's like a starting guard, a starting D tackle, a starting linebacker, and a starting slot corner. I mean, it adds up pretty fast. Big Dolphins fan and post-injuries Tua absolutely cannot do this. Oh, because you have enlightened me on the ability to bail out your play caller. Tua absolutely cannot do that. The whole operation is basically on McDaniel's shoulders. My biggest fear is we give Tua a shit ton of money and we will be screwed when we can't pay for weapons. We are so effed if we move off him because he clearly has talent. I prefer the rookie quarterback contract model because I'll have dementia by the time they find another Marino. What should the Dolphins do? Well, this is Tua's what year? This is his 4th. It's tough. And this is why back to Fields. Now, obviously, he's been much more successful than Fields. When you feel you have Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, a guy that's just a no-brainer, even Lamar, like it's so much easier. When you're like kind of on the fence, like if you're kind of on the fence of marrying her, probably don't get engaged. Like if you're kind of on the fence about taking a job and you have a good job, like probably don't do it. To me, kind of on the fence on big decisions, I do think you got to be careful. I do think because you're on the fence for a reason. Now, it doesn't mean people can't improve. It doesn't mean your mind can't change. But I don't know. I might just play it out. Now, the problem is I don't have his contract up, but the 5th-year option is obviously very expensive. It all hits your cap like the franchise tag. So ideally, you extend them and you make a lower cap number. But it's not like he's taking $30 million a year. Like he's going to want $45 million a year. Can you pay Tua Tagovailoa $45 million a year? Maybe you can if he beats the Cowboys and the Bills. You could argue this stretch is pretty fucking big. Like it's big boy football now. Like I know you beat the Robert Saleh Jets, who have like averaged 1 touchdown a game for 13 games. But okay, playing the Cowboys, and then we got the Ravens, and then we got Buffalo, and then we got the playoffs. Strap in that chin strap. Let's see what you got, homie. This is a very, very, very big stretch for Tua Tagovailoa when it comes to money. He wins 2 of the next 3, lights up the Ravens, lights up the Bills, wins a playoff game. Yeah, what are you going to do? It gets ugly. I don't know. You tell me. I wouldn't feel comfortable if it gets ugly. How legitimate are coaching staff positions? We understand the head coach, DC, and OC are crucial, but what about ancillary positions? What comes to mind is Matt Patricia getting hired back as a football advisor to the Patriots after his Detroit stint. Well, I think when you get those like analysts or senior assistant, it's unless you are around the coaching staff, it's hard to define what they do. Your O-line and D-line coach are every bit as big as coordinators. Your offensive line and defensive line coach can like make your team. And usually the offensive line coach plays an enormous role in the game plan when it comes to the run game. So they just play a huge, and even the pass game when it comes to protections. Your offensive line coach is typically one of the highest paid guys on the team. Like your offensive line coach in the NFL makes 7 figures if he's worth the salt. And your defensive line coach, if he's good, is worth a lot of money. And the good thing, most defensive line coaches don't end up becoming coordinators because the coordinator is really about the secondary and definitely the back seven. That's why a lot of linebacker coaches and DB coaches become coordinators. It's no different why a lot of quarterback coaches ultimately become coordinators, because that's kind of the way you view it's about the passing game. But to me, the line coaches really matter a lot. Now, obviously, if you have a good running back coach, a good wide receiver coach, a good linebacker coach, typically, like why I say Deuce Staley is one of the better position coaches in the league, because I've seen it. Like Deuce Staley's a star. You know, Keith Williams, the wide receiver coach in Baltimore, stud, baller, badass. I mean, he's awesome. But I've been around it, right? And Jim Washburn, and now Chris Kasurik with the Raiders, or excuse me, the 49ers, their D-line coach. He's highest paid D-line coach in the league for a reason. He's really good at his job. And if you get a great D-line coach, you get a good offensive line coach, you never let him go. That's why Jeff Stoutland has been with the Eagles for a decade, because it doesn't matter who comes in. Jeffrey Lurie goes, I'm going to offer you this job, but Jeff Stoutland's going to be your offensive line coach. And they pay Jeff Stoutland a lot of money to say, yeah, I'll stay with this guy. So when it comes to those like senior advisors and, you know, it all depends. Some of them run projects, some of them self-scout. I would say everyone's a little different. What are your thoughts if the Chargers traded Herbert to the Bears for the number 1 pick? It's not an option. It's not an option. Under no circumstances would they do that. Now, I guess for business reasons, and this is what he said, Midwest ethos guy and the Chargers take Caleb, who's already an LA guy. Then the Spanos fam can spend on a coach. I guess you could justify it from a business standpoint, though it gets complicated when you give the big contracts, you pay huge signing bonuses, it hurts your dead cap. If Herbert wasn't under contract yet, I guess I could see that. And I would 100%, I would trade you the number 1 pick if I was the Bears for Justin Herbert. And if he wasn't extended, give him a huge extension. That'd be the easiest trade in NFL history. I don't know. You know, it's easy to talk about and it's a fun conversation. There's no guarantee anyone's ever going to be good coming out of the draft. No guarantee. Zero. I mean, we see it over and over. High picks at any position don't live up to it. And then the dude in the 20s is like TJ Watt. It happens all the fucking time. So I don't think even if it was available, you could do it. Okay, last question. In regards to the full-time, part-time referee discussion, I think the question, what would they do during the week, is a weak excuse. Collaborative rule interpretation, peer review game calling, game simulations, and upcoming game information review are just a few options right at the top of my head. If the NFL can hire people to pick through games for non-penalized hits that didn't result in an injury or players, the NFL can pay the refs to be full-time. If making refs full-time employees resulted in 10 less blown calls, it would be more than worth it. I completely disagree. I don't think it would change the shitty calls at all. I think it would have the level of improvement, let's just assume there would be minute. It would be small. I do not think it would be like, I don't think there would be some major gap in like, they used to be 30% good and now they're 75% good. I'm calling bullshit on that. Now, I think the NFL is more just about the money. Like, why am I paying you full time? Like I said, what are you doing all week? Because to me, for you to pay me full time, meaning I can't have another job, and I don't have the ref salary, but let's just say they're paid 250, 300 grand. I can also have another job to double that income or do whatever I want. I mean, time's the most valuable thing any of us have. What am I going to have to pay you? 800 grand? I still think the NFL is like, for what? Like, what's the point? The referees have always been bad. Like, we think it's worse. It's the same. It's been shitty forever. I think the slow motion, the reviews make it feel worse. It's always been bad. We're talking about human beings. So as we gamble on this, like, listen, I've been mad gambling on games for 20 years. I mean, it feels worse just because everything feels worse at the time. Like, this is the craziest election we're ever going to have. No, we've had crazy elections before, and we'll have crazy ones again. You know, but it always feels like this is the craziest time in human history. No, we've had some crazy fucking times. Pick up a history book. It doesn't repeat itself, but it damn sure rhymes. So I promise you, like, we've had crazy times in history. My dad used to tell me that all the time, and it's so true. Everyone's like, oh my God. No, it's like, look back, you know. And if you were Roger Goodell's position, Paying the refs to be full-time cost you an extra 128 per playoff game? No way. It would. It's not about the cost. It's about my return on investment. What's the point? I don't understand the point. Simulated games? They probably already do that on the side. What the fuck does that even mean? I don't. You act like these people just like don't even think about football Monday through Friday. They do stuff. I've seen these referees go to practice in training camp. I don't think you're like improving your skills. This isn't like going to the driving range in golf. And the more you do it, the more you go to the putting green. It's not the same. The ROI on this one, I don't think would look like the way you were describing. I really don't. So you could argue it's not even about the money. It's about what's the point. Because in theory, this feels like a classroom. Like, well, in theory, they would improve. No, I think in theory doesn't equal reality. It really doesn't. I mean, I've seen these guys at training camp make calls and everyone's screaming at them in training camp. Like, it's hard. When you have Justin Jefferson running full speed at whoever, I'm trying to think of even, it's hard to think of corners, Charvarius Ward or Darius Slay, like it's a bang, bang play. It's hard to figure out. It's so much easier for us sitting on the couch eating flavored pretzels and drinking a Gatorade to be like, oh, that fucking idiot. And listen, I do it all the time. I love doing it. I love talking shit about the refs that are now making $500,000 that come on my television screen that I don't want to hear from, that always tell me something is going to be challenged and it's going to be overturned and then it doesn't get overturned. They're never right, yet they're always on television. But I'm going to disagree with you hard that it would improve much because I really just don't believe it.